The taxi rolled to a stop in front of the pastel-colored facade of the Miami Beach Resort, its neon sign flickering faintly against the late afternoon sun. Vanessa pressed her hand to Lucas's arm, the warmth of his touch grounding her in the whirlwind of excitement. Palm trees swayed lazily in the ocean breeze, casting playful shadows across the cobblestone entrance. The air smelled of salt, sunscreen, and something faintly electric, an undercurrent she couldn't name. We're about to uncover the truth behind Vanessa and Lucas's honeymoon in Miami, a story that starts with romance but quickly turns into a web of mystery and suspense. But before we dive deeper into this chilling tale, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit the like, share and subscribe buttons. I appreciate it. Lucas lifted her suitcase with ease, grinning. "Welcome to paradise," he said, voice low, teasing but with an edge of awe. Vanessa laughed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The hotel lobby sparkled with marble floors and gleaming chrome, a world apart from the bustling streets outside. Couples wandered past them, hand in hand, carrying the unspoken promise of private adventures. As they moved toward the concierge desk, Vanessa's eyes caught a fleeting movement outside the lobby window. At the far edge of the balcony, just beneath the shadow of the hotel's upper floors, a figure lingered, half hidden. A man? A woman? It was impossible to tell at first glance. He, or she, stood still, watching them, almost blending with the columns and shadows. She blinked and the figure was gone. Shaking her head, she chalked it up to Miami's bustling street life and the long flight. The concierge greeted them with a polite, practiced smile, handing over the room key with a flourish. Lucas took it, his thumb brushing Vanessa's hand. "First night in Miami?" he whispered. "Just us." Vanessa leaned into him, the tension of travel melting into the luxury around them. The hotel's soft jazz played in the background, mingling with the distant crash of waves against the shore. Yet even as they laughed and followed the bellhop toward the elevators, a faint unease tugged at Vanessa. There was something subtle, almost imperceptible, about the way the light shifted near the balcony outside. Something that whispered of eyes hidden in shadow, and of a story that was about to unfold, one that would blur the line between paradise and peril. When the elevator doors slid shut behind them, the distant view of the balcony disappeared, leaving only the soft hum of machinery and their own laughter echoing between the mirrored walls. For now, paradise felt perfect. But, unbeknownst to them, someone had already marked their arrival. The suite opened to a breathtaking view of Miami's coastline, the Atlantic stretching endlessly beyond the balcony. Lucas set their luggage down and poured 2 glasses of champagne, the bubbles catching the last glimmers of sunset. Vanessa stepped onto the balcony, the warm breeze tousling her hair and carrying the faint scent of salt and blooming hibiscus. She closed her eyes, leaning into the moment, feeling the weight of the world lift as the city's energy faded behind her. Lucas joined her, sliding an arm around her waist. "Can you believe this?" he murmured, resting his chin on her shoulder. Vanessa smiled, turning to kiss him softly. For a few seconds, the city, the hotel, and even the long journey faded. It was just the two of them, suspended in a perfect golden bubble. Then, a flicker of movement at the corner of her vision made her stiffen. A shadow crossed the balcony just a few doors down, blending almost seamlessly with the hotel architecture. Vanessa blinked, but it was gone before she could point it out. She laughed nervously, trying to shake it off. "Probably just another guest," she said, forcing lightness into her voice. Lucas, noticing her unease, brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Hey, we're safe. It's Miami, not some thriller movie," he joked, though a slight tension crept into his voice. Vanessa nodded, but deep down, a chill coiled in her stomach. The sky above darkened subtly, faint storm clouds gathering on the horizon, as if the day itself were shifting tone. They sipped champagne in companionable silence, listening to the soft hum of the city below. But the distant thunder rolling off the ocean was more than atmospheric. It echoed a growing sense of unease. Vanessa tried to focus on Lucas's reassuring smile, on the sparkle of the glass in her hand, yet her eyes kept flicking toward the shadows just beyond the balcony railing. Finally, when night fully fell and the room was bathed in the soft glow of golden lamps, Vanessa could no longer ignore it. Through the sliding glass doors, she glimpsed a figure standing perfectly still on a nearby balcony, watching them. Her breath caught. Lucas followed her gaze, but by the time he looked, the figure had vanished again. Vanessa's hand trembled slightly as she reached for his. I thought I saw someone," she admitted. Lucas pulled her close, whispering reassurances, but the unease had already taken root. In the quiet of the suite, with the storm rolling in, paradise no longer felt entirely safe. Something unseen was waiting in the shadows, patient, silent, and intent on watching. As they turned off the lights and slipped into bed, the city outside glittered innocently, the ocean's waves crashing as if oblivious to the tension inside the suite. But Vanessa couldn't shake the feeling that tonight, their honeymoon had already been marked, and that the shadow would not remain distant for long. Morning arrived with a pale, diffused light spilling across Miami Beach. Vanessa and Lucas dressed carefully, each layer and accessory chosen for a photo shoot that would capture their honeymoon forever. Vanessa twirled in her flowing white sundress, the fabric catching the breeze, while Lucas adjusted his crisp linen shirt, brushing a smudge from his sleeve. They laughed as they checked their reflections in the mirrored hotel doors, unaware of the tension subtly tightening around them. The photographer greeted them warmly, guiding them toward the soft sand. "Let's capture the magic," she said, her camera ready. Vanessa squeezed Lucas's hand, a mix of nerves and excitement shimmering in her gaze. They walked along the shoreline, waves curling at their feet, the sky a perfect blend of pink and gray. For a moment, everything felt timeless. Love suspended between the warmth of the sun and the cool, whispering ocean. Lucas wrapped an arm around Vanessa as the photographer directed them to pose. They leaned into each other, smiling, laughter spilling effortlessly between them. But just beyond the frame, near the hotel balcony, the shadowy figure reappeared. This time, more deliberate, a stationary observer whose presence the audience could see, but who remained invisible to the couple. The subtle placement of the figure created a tension that contrasted sharply with the joy in the couple's expressions. Vanessa, caught in a swirl of emotion, twirled once more. The photographer clicked rapidly, capturing intimate moments that would later seem innocent and ordinary, except for the hidden observer in the background. The wind tugged at Vanessa's hair, brushing against her neck like a whisper of caution she couldn't quite hear. Lucas laughed, pulling her closer, blissfully unaware of the silent gaze tracking their every movement. As the shoot continued, Vanessa felt a flicker of unease she couldn't place. Her eyes darted toward the hotel, toward the balcony above, but she convinced herself it was nothing. A trick of light, perhaps, or her imagination playing games after last night's unsettling glimpses. She forced a smile and turned back to Lucas, who kissed her forehead tenderly. Yet, the audience knows, as the camera frames the couple in perfect harmony against the beach's romantic backdrop, that the shadow is real. It is patient, calculating, and intimately connected to the story's unfolding mystery. The romantic facade masks a creeping suspense, a hidden danger that lingers just beyond sight, a prelude to the emotional and psychological test the couple will soon face. By the time the shoot ended, the sky had darkened subtly, clouds gathering at the horizon like a silent warning. Vanessa and Lucas returned to the hotel hand in hand, their smiles radiant but tinged with a sense of vulnerability. The perfect honeymoon moment had passed, yet an invisible thread of tension now connected them to the unseen figure, a harbinger of the secrets, danger, and emotional twists that awaited. The next morning, the sun rose over a restless Atlantic, casting shimmering reflections across the wet sand. Vanessa and Lucas walked along a quieter stretch of the beach, savoring the early hour before the crowds arrived. The waves whispered at their feet, a rhythmic lullaby that should have been calming, yet something felt off. Vanessa's gaze flicked toward the dunes, searching for shapes and shadows she couldn't quite name. Her eyes caught footprints, fresh, irregular, leading toward a secluded stretch of beach that seemed untouched by tourists. They weren't their own. Vanessa knelt, tracing them with a finger, the sand cool and damp beneath her hand. Lucas came closer, frowning. "Maybe a jogger or someone walking their dog?" he suggested, though the doubt in his tone betrayed him. Vanessa felt a shiver run down her spine. The footprints seemed deliberate, purposeful, a silent marker in the sand. As they continued walking, the footprints disappeared near a rocky outcrop, vanishing as if whoever made them had melted into the landscape. Vanessa's unease deepened, an emotional knot tightening in her chest. Lucas, sensing her tension, squeezed her hand reassuringly. "We're fine. Really. It's just a coincidence," he said, though the firmness in his voice seemed more for her comfort than his own belief. Later that afternoon they returned to the suite, the Miami sun now blazing overhead, casting stark shadows across the balcony. Vanessa unpacked souvenirs while Lucas checked messages on his phone. The storm clouds from yesterday had thickened subtly at the horizon, gray tendrils curling over the city. Vanessa's eyes drifted toward the balcony again. A shadow flickered there, the figure she had glimpsed before, now partially hidden behind the railing. She blinked and it was gone. Her pulse quickened. She tried to shake it off, attributing the fear to imagination and jet lag, but the sense of being watched was undeniable. Lucas noticed the change in her demeanor, concern etched across his face. "What is it?" he asked gently. Vanessa hesitated, the words catching in her throat. I don't know. It's just a feeling, like someone's watching us," she admitted. That night the storm finally broke. Rain pelted the balcony, rhythmic and relentless, and the wind howled as if carrying whispers from unseen corners. Vanessa and Lucas watched from the suite, holding each other close, the romantic dream of their honeymoon now tinged with subtle dread. Through the glass, a dark silhouette appeared briefly, a shadowy figure, patient, silent, and unyielding. It was a presence they couldn't yet name, but one that promised their paradise might be more fragile than they had imagined. As sleep beckoned, Vanessa lay awake, listening to the storm, feeling the pulse of Miami outside, and the invisible tension pressing in. The footprints in the sand, the shadow on the balcony, the gathering clouds, all were small, easily overlooked pieces of a puzzle that would soon demand their attention. The following afternoon Vanessa and Lucas lounged on the balcony, the storm having passed but leaving the air thick and humid. Miami streets below buzzed with life, the city's usual blend of tourists, locals, and distant music filtering up to their suite. Vanessa sipped a fruity cocktail, trying to focus on the soothing rhythm of waves crashing on the shore. Yet, a shadow of unease clung to her, stubborn and persistent. A knock at the door broke the calm. Lucas frowned and went to answer, expecting perhaps room service or a courtesy visit from the hotel staff. Instead, the hotel manager stood there, a neatly dressed man with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Carson," he said, his voice cordial but tense. "I apologize for the interruption, but we've had reports of a disturbance in the area near the hotel. Nothing serious, but I thought you should be aware." Vanessa exchanged a glance with Lucas, her stomach tightening. "A disturbance?" she repeated cautiously. The manager nodded, glancing briefly over his shoulder as if the mere mention of it unsettled him. "Just some unusual activity. We recommend caution, nothing more. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call the front desk." He left as quickly as he had appeared, leaving an oddly heavy silence behind. Lucas tried to brush it off. "Probably just a local event or someone partying too late," he said, though his fingers drummed nervously on the doorframe. Vanessa, however, couldn't shake the feeling that the warning was personal, not random. She felt eyes on them again, not from a balcony this time, but an intangible pressure, as if someone were tracking their movements even inside the safety of the suite. Later, as they walked along the hotel corridor, Vanessa caught a fleeting glimpse of movement at the far end, a shadow disappearing around a corner. Her pulse quickened, and for the first time Lucas's reassurances felt hollow. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, gripping his arm. He followed her gaze, but the hall was empty. Still, the unease lingered like a thick fog, impossible to ignore. That evening, back on their balcony overlooking the Miami skyline, Vanessa sat silently, tracing patterns in the condensation on the glass. Lucas held her hand, concern etched in his features. "We'll figure this out together," he said quietly. But Vanessa's thoughts drifted to the shadowy figure she'd glimpsed days ago, and the hotel manager's oddly nervous warning. Someone was watching, waiting, and their honeymoon was no longer just about love, it was a delicate dance with danger. The lights of Miami shimmered below, unaware of the tension in the suite above. Somewhere in the shadows of the hotel, the figure moved once more, patient and deliberate, leaving the couple blissfully unaware yet increasingly entwined in a story that would test the very foundations of their trust and love. The next morning, Vanessa awoke before Lucas, sunlight streaming through the blinds in thin golden slivers. She wandered to the small desk in their suite, where she found the hotel's welcome brochure left neatly beside a vase of orchids. As she flipped through the pages, something tucked between them caught her eye, a small, folded note. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it. The message was brief, almost cryptic. "Not everyone here is what they seem. Watch closely." The handwriting was unfamiliar, elegant but deliberate, leaving a chill that crept along her spine. Vanessa's mind raced. Was it a prank? A warning from the hotel staff? Or something far more sinister? She glanced at Lucas, still asleep, peaceful and unaware, and her stomach twisted with fear. Lucas stirred as she held the note, frowning at her expression. "What is it?" he asked, voice hoarse with sleep. Vanessa hesitated, debating whether to share it or dismiss it as some harmless mistake. Finally she handed him the paper. As he read, his brows knitted together. This doesn't make any sense," he muttered, trying to stay rational. But even he couldn't ignore the tension rising in the room. The emotional weight of the message pressed on Vanessa. Memories of the shadowy figure on the balcony, the footprints in the sand, and the hotel manager's warning swirled together. Fear clashed with excitement, love intertwined with anxiety. She felt the first seeds of paranoia, yet beneath it all was a stubborn need to believe that Lucas and she could navigate whatever danger lay ahead. Lucas tried to reassure her, holding her hand firmly. "We're together. Nothing's going to hurt us," he said. His voice was steady, yet Vanessa noticed the subtle strain in his eyes, a silent acknowledgement that their honeymoon was no longer just a celebration. It had become a delicate balancing act between trust, love, and the unknown. Vanessa placed the note back on the desk, her fingers lingering on the paper. She felt a mix of fear and determination, fear for what might be coming and determination not to let it overshadow the joy of their honeymoon. As the Miami sun climbed higher, she realized that the paradise around them was fragile, a veneer over something darker, and the message was only the first sign that someone had taken a keen interest in them. That evening, as they sipped wine on the balcony, Vanessa kept glancing toward the hotel's upper floors. Shadows shifted subtly in the fading light, and for the first time, the romantic rhythm of Miami felt punctuated by the pulse of danger. Someone, somewhere was watching, waiting, and their honeymoon had already become part of a story they hadn't chosen. One that demanded vigilance, courage, and trust in each other. Night fell over Miami like a velvet curtain, the streets below glowing with neon signs and the faint hum of late-night traffic. Vanessa and Lucas stepped out of the hotel, seeking the calm of a moonlit walk along Ocean Drive. The salty air was warm, tinged with exhaust fumes and the faint, sweet scent of blooming jasmine from nearby gardens. Vanessa held Lucas's hand tightly, her nerves taut from the morning's cryptic note, the shadowy figure, and the lingering unease in the hotel. At first, the walk felt ordinary, the chatter of tourists, the soft clink of glasses from sidewalk cafes, the distant rhythm of music spilling from clubs. But as they turned a quiet corner, Vanessa caught movement at the edge of her vision. A figure followed them across the promenade, keeping distance but matching their pace. Her pulse quickened. "Lucas, someone's behind us," she whispered, voice tight. Lucas glanced over his shoulder. At first, the street seemed empty, but then he caught a glimpse of a silhouette, tall, slow, deliberate, shadowed beneath a lamppost. "It's probably just coincidence," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Vanessa shook her head. "No, it's not," she insisted, a cold dread creeping up her spine. "They're following us." The streets, once vibrant and lively, now seemed ominous. Neon lights flickered in their reflections on wet pavement, casting strange, shifting shadows. Every passerby appeared suspicious, every alley a potential hiding place. Vanessa's grip on Lucas's hand tightened, and he responded by pulling her closer, instincts of protection flaring in his chest. The emotional tension between them was palpable. Love mingling with fear, intimacy interwoven with uncertainty. They quickened their pace, hoping the crowded promenade would obscure them, but the figure maintained the distance, patient and relentless. Vanessa ducked into the entrance of a small boutique, pretending to browse, and Lucas stayed close behind, scanning for exits. For a moment, the figure paused under the dim glow of a streetlight, then continued on, still trailing them. Finally, they ducked back toward the hotel, hearts pounding, lungs tight. Once inside the lobby, surrounded by the familiar hum of the resort, they allowed themselves a shaky laugh, relief masking terror. Yet even as they ascended to their suite, Vanessa couldn't shake the feeling that the figure was waiting, somewhere beyond the walls of their room, patient and unyielding. That night, as they lay in bed, the city's lights twinkling below, Vanessa whispered, "They're not going to stop." Lucas held her tight, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We'll face it. Together," he said, voice steady. But deep down, both knew that the honeymoon paradise they had envisioned had become a stage for something far more dangerous. A silent game of pursuit, where every shadow could hide a threat, and every step outside the hotel carried a pulse of fear. By evening, Miami's sky had darkened into a brooding canvas. Thick storm clouds gathered like bruises above the ocean, and a restless wind rattled the palms outside the hotel. Vanessa stood at the balcony doors, staring into the rising tempest, her reflection in the glass a pale echo of her unease. Behind her, Lucas flipped idly through television channels, trying to inject normalcy into the atmosphere. But the crackle of static and the occasional flash of lightning betrayed the calm he was working so hard to maintain. The power flickered once, twice before stabilizing. The lamps glowed faintly, their halos of light pushing against the shadows creeping in from every corner. Vanessa pressed her palm to the glass. Just as thunder rumbled across the coastline, she caught it again, a silhouette reflected faintly in the sliding doors. So, watching. Her breath caught. She spun toward the balcony, but it was empty save for sheets of rain whipping against the rail. "Lucas, I saw it," she whispered urgently, her chest tightening. "The figure. Right there." Her voice trembled, threading between fear and desperation. Lucas joined her, peering through the glass. "Vanessa, there's no one," he said softly. "It's the storm. Shadows, reflections, it's easy to imagine things." His tone was soothing, but his eyes betrayed the strain of doubt. Vanessa turned on him, her emotions colliding. "You think I'm making this up? That I'm paranoid?" Her voice cracked, the fear in her chest morphing into frustration. Lucas took her hands gently, but she pulled away, pacing the room. "First the footprints, then the note, then someone following us, and now this. You think it's all in my head?" The storm outside raged louder, thunder shattering the silence between them. Lucas hesitated, torn between wanting to believe her and wanting to protect her from the fear consuming her. "I don't think you're crazy," he said firmly. I don't know what's real anymore." The word struck Vanessa like a physical blow. For the first time she felt the edges of isolation creeping in, not only from the outside world but from the very person she trusted most. Tears welled in her eyes, though she fought to hold them back. Lightning split the sky, flooding the room with blinding light for a heartbeat. And in that instant, Vanessa saw it again, the shadowy figure reflected in the mirrored closet doors, standing closer than ever. When darkness returned, the reflection was gone. Her scream tore through the suite, drowned only by the crash of thunder. Lucas rushed to her side, heart pounding, but the closet was empty. The air, however, felt heavy, charged, as if someone had just been there. The storm pressed against the windows, the wind howling like a warning. Vanessa buried her face in Lucas's chest, trembling. "It's real," she whispered. "I swear it's real." Lucas held her, but even as he whispered reassurances, doubt gnawed at him. Was it Vanessa's imagination unraveling under pressure? Or was someone, truly stalking them in the shadows of their paradise? The next morning, Miami greeted them with deceptive calm. The storm had passed, leaving streets glistening with leftover rain and the air thick with humidity. Vanessa and Lucas ventured into Little Havana, hoping the bustling streets, colorful murals, and aromatic cafes would offer a reprieve from the tension of the past days. The city was alive with music, chatter, and the aroma of fresh coffee, a vibrant contrast to the shadows that had haunted their hotel. At first, the excursion felt almost normal. Vanessa smiled at street performers, Lucas joked with vendors, and they allowed themselves brief moments of laughter. But even amidst the crowd, Vanessa's eyes scanned relentlessly. Faces seemed familiar yet unplaceable, as if someone had been studying them for weeks. She noticed patterns in graffiti on walls, words partially obscured but eerily deliberate. Her stomach knotted with a mix of fear and fascination. Then came the subtle clue, a small envelope tucked behind a planter outside a cafe. Vanessa's hands shook as she picked it up. Inside, a single photograph of herself taken weeks earlier in Miami, alone, unaware, stared back at her. Her pulse quickened, a cold surge of dread overtaking the morning's warmth. Lucas leaned close, his face pale. "How?" he murmured. "Who could do this?" They continued walking, the streets now layered with tension. Every passerby, every reflection in a window, seemed like a potential observer. Vanessa clutched Lucas's arm, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. The cryptic messages, the shadowy figure, the footprints in the sand, all were converging into a dangerous puzzle. Each step outside the hotel was a step deeper into someone else's design. They paused at a quiet plaza trying to catch their breath. Vanessa unfolded the photograph again. "They're watching us, everywhere," she said, voice barely audible over the distant rhythm of a drum circle. Lucas scanned the crowd, searching for any sign of the observer, but the city appeared innocuous, vibrant and alive, oblivious to the tension shadowing the couple. By midday the couple returned to the hotel, hearts heavy, minds racing. The clues confirmed what Vanessa had feared. Their honeymoon was no longer just a romantic escape. Someone had chosen them as their focus, orchestrating a silent game of observation, control, and intimidation. Back in the suite, Vanessa stared out at the balcony, the Miami skyline sparkling deceptively in the afternoon sun. The shadowy figure had receded for now, but the threat remained. Love and fear intertwined, trust and doubt clashed, and the couple realized that paradise could be a dangerous illusion. That evening, Miami's sky burned with the orange and pink hues of sunset, a deceptive calm after the storm. Vanessa and Lucas returned to their suite, exhausted from the day's tense exploration. As they stepped onto the balcony, Lucas noticed something unusual, a small envelope tucked between the railing and a potted plant. Vanessa's hands shook as she picked it up, her heart hammering against her chest. Inside was a photograph, not just any photograph, but one of Vanessa, alone, taken weeks before their honeymoon, standing outside a cafe in Little Havana. The recognition of herself, caught unaware, sent chills racing down her spine. "Lucas, look at this," she whispered, voice trembling. "They've been watching me. Long before we got here." Lucas took the photograph, studying it carefully. His jaw tightened, and for the first time, fear etched itself across his usually confident expression. "This isn't random," he said, his voice low, controlled. "Someone knows us. Someone is tracking everything, every move." Then, in the reflection of the suite's mirrored closet doors, Vanessa caught a glimpse of movement. Subtle, deliberate, unmistakable. A figure, now unmistakably a woman in her 40s, stood near the far end of the balcony, partially obscured by shadows. Her gaze seemed fixed on Vanessa, calm and calculating. Before either could react, she melted into the shadows, leaving only the envelope behind as proof of her presence. Vanessa's hands clutched Lucas's arm, her fear mingling with disbelief. "She's here, she's been here," she whispered almost to herself. Lucas pulled her close, protective instincts flaring. "We need to stay calm. Figure out who she is," he said, though the tension in his own posture betrayed his worry. The emotional weight of the discovery pressed heavily on them. Vanessa felt a mix of betrayal, fear, and anger. Someone had invaded her life, observed her, and now threatened the sanctity of their honeymoon. Lucas felt the sting of helplessness, realizing that no matter how much he wanted to protect Vanessa, they were entangled in someone else's plan, and paradise had become a dangerous game. As night settled over Miami, the city's glittering lights below mocked their vulnerability. The shadowy figure had revealed herself, but only partially, leaving questions dangling like threads in the wind. Who was she? What did she want? And how much of their honeymoon, their lives, had already been compromised? Vanessa and Lucas clung to each other, hearts pounding, knowing that their love alone might not be enough to protect them from the growing storm lurking just beyond the balcony. The morning after the confrontation, Vanessa woke with a heavy sense of dread pressing on her chest. The photograph, the shadowy figure, and the storm of fear from the previous night churned in her mind. Lucas slept beside her, unaware of the sudden memory that had gripped Vanessa with an icy intensity. She couldn't ignore it anymore. The woman on the balcony, the silent observer, was someone from her past. Years ago, before Lucas entered her life, Vanessa had been involved in a professional project in Miami, a high-stakes art exhibit featuring international collectors and shady deals behind the glamour. One woman, who had seemed a trusted associate at the time, had disappeared from her life abruptly, leaving unresolved tension and a faint sense of threat. Vanessa's stomach tightened as the pieces fell together. The figure was her former acquaintance, someone who had every reason to hold a grudge and perhaps the means to track her across states. Lucas awoke to find Vanessa pale, her hands trembling as she recounted the memory. "It's her," she said finally, voice taut. "The woman watching us. She's someone I trusted before you and before this trip. I thought she was gone. I thought she didn't matter anymore." Lucas's jaw tightened. "Why now?" he asked. "Why come back after all this time?" Vanessa shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know. But she knows me. She knows everything about me, and now she knows about us." The emotional weight of betrayal and fear settled between them like a physical barrier. As they paced the suite, attempting to process the revelation, Lucas realized the danger was deeper than he had imagined. Their honeymoon, meant to be a celebration of love, had become a collision between Vanessa's past and the shadows it had cast over their present. Trust became fragile, fear threaded its way into every glance and gesture. Yet, beneath it all, Lucas's resolve hardened. He would protect Vanessa no matter the cost. That evening, as the Miami skyline glimmered in the fading light, the shadowy figure returned, not on the balcony this time, but in the reflection of the suite's glass doors. Vanessa gasped, recognizing her unmistakable posture. The confrontation was inevitable. She realized the woman's vendetta wasn't random. It was personal, intimate, and meticulously orchestrated. Vanessa and Lucas clung to each other, hearts racing, understanding for the first time the magnitude of the threat. The paradise they had imagined was gone, replaced by a city of secrets, shadows, and someone who would stop at nothing to settle an old score. Love had survived storms before, but this was different. This was a test of trust, courage, and the bonds that tied them together. The following days blurred into a tense rhythm of vigilance. Vanessa and Lucas moved cautiously through the hotel and Miami streets, eyes darting to every passerby, every reflection, every flicker of movement. The shadowy figure no longer limited herself to mere observation. Her presence was felt in subtle, almost invisible ways. A door left slightly ajar in the suite when they returned. A note tucked under a room key and signed but unmistakably deliberate, "We see everything." Lucas paced the suite, scanning the room, tension coiling in his muscles. Vanessa sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the photograph from little Havana, her mind racing. Every sound, a distant footstep, the hum of an elevator, a neighbor's laugh, set her heart racing. She could no longer trust the city, the hotel, or even fleeting moments of silence. The invisible thread of the shadowy figure stretched taut, threatening to snap with the slightest movement. Even meals at the hotel restaurant carried the weight of paranoia. Vanessa noticed a figure at a distant table, seemingly absorbed in a magazine, but she could swear the person's eyes flicked toward her every time she shifted. Lucas caught her gaze, trying to reassure her with a calm tone. "It's all paranoia," he said, though his furrowed brow betrayed the nagging doubt that had begun to seep in. Vanessa shook her head. "No, it's real. She's everywhere." That night, the storm returned, rattling the balcony doors and shivering through the suite. The shadowy figure's games escalated further. A faint scratching at the balcony railing, a fleeting silhouette in the mirrored closet, and the subtle rearrangement of items Vanessa swore she had placed herself. The psychological pressure was relentless, testing their bond, their composure, and their sense of reality. Vanessa's emotional state frayed at the edges. Fear, anger, and betrayal wove together, a tangled web she couldn't escape. Lucas became increasingly protective, his frustration simmering beneath the surface, as he realized their paradise had transformed into a battlefield. Every corner of the suite, every reflection in the glass, was a potential window for the figure to strike, and neither of them could predict her next move. By midnight, the couple sat huddled on the bed, holding hands, staring at the darkened balcony. The storm had passed, leaving only the oppressive weight of anticipation. The shadowy figure was patient, a predator in her own quiet game. Love had brought Vanessa and Lucas together, but now, under the shadow of surveillance and fear, it was being tested like never before. Every heartbeat, every glance, every whispered reassurance was a fragile thread holding them against the growing tide of danger. Night had fallen again over Miami, the city bathed in the storm's raw energy. Lightning flashed across the skyline, illuminating the waves crashing violently against the shore. Vanessa and Lucas stood in their suite, hearts pounding, having devised a plan to confront the shadowy figure. Every instinct screamed caution, but fear had sharpened their resolve. They would face the threat head-on. Clad in dark clothing, they moved through the hotel corridors, each step measured, every sound amplified by the storm outside. Lucas's hand gripped Vanessa's tightly, anchoring her to the moment, to reality, to him. Shadows danced across the walls as lightning struck, brief glimpses of the threatening figure's presence flickering in the stormlit corridors, always just out of reach. They reached the rooftop terrace, the wind lashing against them, the storm tearing at their clothes and hair. And there she was, unmistakable, standing near the edge, calm amidst chaos. The shadowy figure's eyes locked on Vanessa's, cold and calculating, her posture exuding control and menace. Lucas stepped in front of Vanessa instinctively, a protective shield between her and the unknown danger. "Why are you doing this?" Vanessa shouted over the wind, voice trembling yet resolute. The figure's lips curved into a thin, almost imperceptible smile. "Because you never finished what you started," she said, her tone icy, deliberate. The words pierced Vanessa's heart. This vendetta had been planned long ago, rooted in their shared past, and it was far from personal curiosity, it was calculated revenge. Lucas's fists clenched, anger mixing with fear. "It ends tonight," he said, voice steady despite the storm. The figure took a slow step back, retreating toward the stairwell. In a sudden surge, Vanessa and Lucas advanced, confronting her directly. But before any physical altercation could occur, the woman left behind a single object on the rooftop, a journal, heavy and weathered, bound in black leather. Vanessa snatched it up, hands shaking. Flipping it open, she discovered pages filled with detailed observations of her life, movements, habits, even moments with Lucas, and cryptic notes that explained the motives behind the stalking. Shock, anger, and relief washed over her in equal measure. The figure had orchestrated fear, but the journal revealed vulnerabilities, providing the couple a path to reclaim control. As the shadowy woman disappeared into the night, the storm began to subside, rain fading into mist. Lucas wrapped Vanessa in his arms, holding her close as adrenaline ebbed. "It's over," he whispered, though both knew the psychological echoes of the ordeal would linger. But for now they had survived, confronted the danger, and claimed a small victory together. Above the Miami skyline, the clouds parted slightly, revealing a faint glimmer of stars. Love had endured amidst chaos, fear, and betrayal. The storm outside mirrored the storm within, but they had faced it, together. Morning dawned over Miami with an almost surreal calm. The streets glistened from the previous night's storm, palm trees dripping with rain, and sunlight reflecting off the water in golden streaks. Vanessa and Lucas sat on the balcony of their suite, wrapped in towels and soft blankets, sipping coffee in companionable silence. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, serene yet reminding them of the turbulence they had endured. The journal rested between them, a tangible reminder of the shadowy figure's intrusion and the secrets it contained. Vanessa flipped through its pages one last time, a mixture of apprehension and relief washing over her. Every note, every observation, every cryptic warning had been a thread in a dark tapestry, one they had survived together. She closed it, setting it gently on the table. Lucas reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining as naturally as they had when they first met. "We made it," he said softly, his eyes reflecting both exhaustion and deep affection. Vanessa nodded, leaning against him. "We did. Together," she replied. The emotional weight of the past days, fear, tension, doubt, had forged something stronger between them. Love, trust, and resilience now intertwined with an unspoken understanding that life could change in a heartbeat. As they looked out at the horizon, Vanessa's mind reflected on the ordeal. The shadowy figure had represented not just an external threat, but the unresolved parts of her past, secrets she had hoped were long buried. Facing it had been terrifying, but it had also been liberating. Fear had been a teacher, testing their bond, their courage, and their ability to trust one another fully. By midday they packed lightly, deciding to leave the hotel for a short drive along the coast. Each mile away from the city's shadows felt like reclaiming fragments of freedom. Vanessa glanced at Lucas, her eyes softening with gratitude and love. "I never want to take this for granted," she said. He smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "Neither do I. Every moment counts, now more than ever." Though Miami had been the stage for fear and suspense, it had also been the backdrop for their resilience. The storm had passed, but it left behind clarity, courage, and a renewed sense of connection. They had faced shadows, external and internal, and emerged not unscathed but unbroken, stronger as individuals and as a couple. As they drove toward the open horizon, the ocean sparkling beside them, the wind in their hair, the sunlight warm on their faces, Vanessa and Lucas knew that life's unpredictable storms could never overshadow the bond they had built. Their honeymoon, once envisioned as pure romance, had become a crucible, forging a love resilient enough to weather any darkness that might lie ahead. And for the first time in days, Vanessa allowed herself to smile without fear, her hand resting lightly in Lucas's as the world opened up before them, a Miami of light, hope, and the promise of new beginnings. Please share your thoughts in the comments below and do not forget to subscribe for more if you enjoyed this story. Thank you.